Hey guys, welcome back to Heavenly Honey.
We today have a special guest. Guys, this is Preston. He is an old friend of ours, like old. Like
We're not that old. From a while back.
Yes, we met him in elementary, went to middle school with him. So he's an old friend. He actually reached out to us, come on here, talk about his story and his walk with Christ. And we just wanted to share that with y'all. So first, we're going to pray, over this time. And then we are going to get into this man's story. But first, I just want to say, thank you for coming on here. Thank you for being here and taking your time. Yeah. Okay, let's pray. Lord, thank you for this time that you have given us today. Lord, I just pray that your glory would shine through us and onto the people listening. God, I pray that those listening, their hearts and their mind would be open to you and your word, Lord. I pray that everything that we speak is from you and you alone. I pray the Holy Spirit would flow through us, flow through our words, so that we are able to just, be here in community and get to talk about your love and everything that you've done for us in our own lives, God. And just thank you for everything that you are doing. And I just pray that this would be such a powerful video to many out there, Lord. And just once again, thank you so much. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, Preston. Well, first, okay, we met him elementary, sixth grade.
So our elementary is weird because most elementaries are not sixth grade.
Which I think it's changed now because even like my little siblings, they still have sixth grade in elementary. So I think it's just
good to know.
It's weird. But then we went to middle school with him, and then you left in 8th grade, right?
Yes, I did.
8th grade. Okay. So I want you to start from there, and then I want you to tell us kind of like how your life used to be, and then how you came to find Christ.
All right. So I would say from the beginning, our family has always been religious. And so pretty much from the start, I always known God, essentially. But, when you're young like that, it's just like it's almost like checking a box off a list, when parents say you have to get up and get ready for church and stuff. So, like, even though I knew him, I wasn't a follower at all. I can confidently say that. So then we moved, once we left from Euless and I moved over to Arlington, I would say my mom, how do I say? She was personally still involved with the church and everything, but she wasn't as strict on me and my brother. So it was like, if you want to come, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to, type of thing. And from that point on, I stopped going to church. And I always had a Bible in my room. And what's crazy to me is, now that I think about it, is that even though I wasn't going to church, I always had that mentality, I guess, since I grew up that way of, I'm doing this. I know God will look at me in some type of crazy way if he see me doing this right now. And so I've always had that mentality, and I always thought that way with like anything and everything I did. And I still sin, obviously, but I always came to the thought of, dang, if God can see me right now, I'd probably be mad. Yeah. But so I went through I finished out in middle school, which so when I left, it was junior high, right? And then I came over here, and then I think it was still considered middle school.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Arlington, when I finished my 8th grade year. And then high school was 9th through 12th. So I finished the rest of my school year. And then after I got done, I was deciding on whether if I wanted to go to college or not. And I didn't want to have to make my mom pay. So I was like, nah, I'm gonna go work. I'm gonna go save as much money as I can. I'm gonna spend that money myself to go to college. So I did that. I got a job, Panda Express, slaving away at that job. And then yeah, so everything was going fine and stuff like that. And then I ran into I don't want to call them relationships, but it's just people that I've been talking to and stuff. And I always thought this was a coincidence, but it just happened to be that like back to back to back to back, there's always been issues. And I don't mean in the sense of like me and her against arguments, stuff like that. I mean like outside issues in the sense of we're talking to each other, taking her on like a date or two, and then one of my homeboys comes up to me, he's like, "Hey," I was like, "Huh?" He's like, "You know she has a man?" I was like, "Huh?" He was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "What you mean?" He was like, "Yeah, cause this girl and my boy's girl, they were friends. So she told her, but she didn't want to tell nobody else. But me and his girl, we're also friends, and we knew each other before they knew each other. So she told him, and he came and told me. And after that, I was like, man, that's crazy. I confronted her about it, started stuttering and everything. I was like, it's cool, you know, you do you. I'm not mad at you or nothing. You go your way, I go my way. And I ran into that exact situation twice. And then I ran into another situation where it's like almost like a stalker type situation.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. And then I was like, you know what? Maybe I don't need a date right now. Maybe take my time to myself. And then, which is crazy because a few months after me coming up with that decision, I had one day where I don't remember exactly what happened, but yeah, I was just sitting at home, and then I just went into this state, and I'm sitting in my room, it's by myself, late night. I got work in the morning, and then I'm just like, dang, I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I'm like I wasn't necessarily doing anything wrong, but I was like, dang, because once again, like even though I didn't follow God, I still believed in Him. I still knew of His existence and everything. And I was just sitting there. It's like one of the like first times I ever actually talked to God and not just praying and just asking for stuff. So yeah, I was sitting there talking. I'm like, dang. I'm like, why do you still give me these chances after all this time? Me, I guess not necessarily ignoring, but not listening to you.
Right.
So I'm like, damn, what am I doing? What am I doing in my life? And then and that's when I came up that's when I finally made a decision. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna open my Bible. I'm gonna try to read. Mind you, I don't like reading. So that was a big struggle for me, just trying to open the Bible and read. And then I remember, I was like, oh, wait a minute. My coach, which is back in high school, is when he told me about the Bible. And that's crazy. I need to explain that more. So going back to high school, when I was in football, my coach ran FCA, and then he came up to everybody. He's like, "Hey, y'all should be there." And since he was my main position coach, I was a linebacker. He was a linebacker coach. He was like not necessarily forcing me, but he was like, "Hey, you should be there." And when he was first saying that, I wasn't really listening. I was like, yeah, I'll show up and stuff. And then I was like, you know what, for you, I'm gonna show up. Because I actually liked him a lot as a coach. And so I showed up. This is before school I started. It was when he was hosting these. And it was like a solid just 30 minutes of just like going through scriptures and stuff like that. And then I was like, I kind of like this. It's kind of cool. And so, yeah, I kept on showing up to it then. And that's when he handed me this Bible right here. And then that's when he introduced me also to the Bible app too. And I was like, I didn't know it at the time, but it also had the AI thing that reads for you. And so fast forwarding back to when I decided to actually start opening my Bible, I was like, dang, especially because it was the King James version. And you know how they talk different English. So I was like, damn, I'm really struggling right now. Then I figured out that it could read for you. I was like, okay, bet. And so I started doing that. And I'll just let it play and I'll follow along. And then I ran into an issue of, it was essentially like, I'll do it when I have time in my day to do it. And I'm thinking that's okay because it's like, oh, I'm still, opening my Bible up every now and then. It's fine. It's good enough. And then, so this is only when I was working at Panda Express, and I got my second job, security job in Dallas. And when I was working there's actually a lot of downtime while I'm working there. And so when I first started doing it, I would just play games on my phone and stuff, or do whatever while I'm watching the cameras, doing walk-arounds on the property and stuff. And then I was like, you know what I could be doing right now? I could be reading the Bible. Let me get on that. And so, I used my downtime to read the Bible. And I was still struggling with it. I was like, here, let me do this instead, because they allow us to have headphones in. And so what I'll be doing, majority, like literally the whole shift, just listen to music. I was like, let me replace that music with just the Bible. And so which is what I do now, throughout the entire shift, I would just have the Bible playing in my ear. So like, even if I'm like busy working on doing whatever, it's like constantly getting fed into my head. And even though I don't necessarily hear everything, because I still be busy trying to work and stuff, it's still constantly getting fed to me.
Yeah.
And what I didn't realize is that it actually kept my mind very focused, in a sense of like no negative thoughts were coming in, like at all. And I say that helped a lot, really. And then I didn't, like I told you, my mom wasn't pressuring us to go to church. I wasn't really going to church. And then that's when my friend invited me. I was like, at first I was like, do I really want to? Because I was also thinking about it from a perspective of me going to church doesn't mean that I believe even harder than I do now. It's not gonna save me or anything like that. So I was like, well, me going to church is not really gonna change anything. Me not going to church is really not gonna change anything. I still believe, I'm still in my Bible, I'm still praying. And I was like, I don't really need to go to church. And then it was the same thing. I was like, you know what? I think that way. If I really don't feel like going, let me just go for him right now. And so me and him, we went, and then I was like, okay, it's kind of cool. It's generally, the church was mainly like an older population. I'd say like probably like nobody under 50s. And so there's nobody really my age. It was a little bit awkward, but I was like, okay, it's pretty cool. And then I invited some of my other friends to come too. And so we just been going there. But like I said, when he invited me, it's predominantly a white church. And the vibe is really different from black churches, and black churches is what I'm used to. And I feel like it's kind of weird to try to find a different church, because I ran into people where if you don't necessarily like have I'm trying to think, so this is going to be a crazy analogy, but it's like they represent their church the same way that gang members represent their hood. You know what I mean? And it's like if you go into like different churches and stuff, they get extremely offended by it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're not all reading from the same book.
Right.
What's going on? And so that was also another thing that was deterring me from church too, was even dealing with all that and trying to find one. But my friend told me about this African church that she'd be going to because she's African. I'm like, never really been to African church, but I'm down to try it. And she said that their population is mainly around our age group. I'm like, okay, cool. I was like, I'll let you know when I'm pretty sure when I'm gonna go. And then right now I'm currently going through the dilemma of, well, I don't want to leave this church I'm already going to, because like I know these people. And so what the current plan is, I haven't done it yet, but what the current plan is, I'm gonna go to church with my other friend and then go to the other church right after that, because church with my first friend is from 9:30 to 12, and the other church starts at 12:30. So I'm like, I should technically have time to do that. And then I also told one of my bosses, I was like, yeah, no, I can't work Sundays no more. So you give myself time for that. That's another thing I had to learn. Instead of trying to fit the Bible onto my schedule, I fit my schedule into the Bible. So I now try to not make time for it, but I set a certain time for like this has to get done today, and I won't let nothing else to protrude in on that time if possible.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's important because you can't fit God into your schedule. You have to prioritize everything that you do for God. It's like even like work, like you said, like you put in the Bible like app on your headphones and listen to it with work. And so it's like when you're at work, you're also glorifying God. So it's like you said, like you got to prioritize that, within your day. So yeah. What was like that moment that you had that just like changed everything for you, that made you like want to follow God?
I said it was that time when I was just sitting in my room and I was just questioning like my life and currently where it was at, because the way that I view myself, I try to be like super critical in everything I do, and it's to a fault to a certain extent, and I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, it was just a sense of I'm not where I want to be.
Yeah, like you could see yourself going down the wrong path in the future.
I'm like, dang, what am I doing? What am I doing? And I was like, well, how do I improve on my situation? And once again, like I said, even when I was younger, and I wasn't necessarily, or when I stopped going to church, I wasn't necessarily like following God. I always still had that thought process of, what would God think about what I'm doing right now? And so, in that moment, I was like, well, what would God do in this situation? Or Jesus do in this situation? I was like, well, he would probably pray about it. And that's literally what I did. So I just sat there and I prayed about it. And then that's when I made the decision to start reading and following and stuff. And I'll say that in that moment, during that whole situation, I was like, the first time I cried in years and everything, and I was sitting there crying and praying and stuff. I was like, dang, this is crazy. And then, and then what's also crazy too is, when you start off, it's not that easy and everything. And then I didn't really talk about it with like nobody else. Like it's really just my thing. I just need to work on it real quick. And then recently, I got into a conversation with one of my close friends. We just, I don't remember how it originally started, but it was just like late night. Me and him went to the basketball court just to like hoop around and stuff. And then we had also grabbed some food. So while we sitting down eating, this is the first time I ever talked to him about this, by the way. I was like, hey, why do you believe in God? I just randomly brought it up. And then we started going back and forth for like an hour and a half, just talking about it. And that was also like another time in like years I've ever cried. Once again, just talking about it. And I was like, dang, in front of him of all people? Yeah, I don't know anything about this. But yeah.
I love that you brought that up, because I feel like that's most people's situation where, of course, they know God, but it's like, why am I not following God if I know that that's what I'm supposed to be doing? And you go about it alone because you're like, yeah, I just need to get into the Word, I just need to do this. But it's so hard to just like sit and think and criticize yourself about all the things I should be doing when, you could go to someone else and they can tell you, hey, this is what I did, at least.
Yeah, that's powerful. Like, because I feel like we all kind of go through that journey in the beginning. Like, the beginning is probably the hardest time because you literally don't know anything.
Yeah, you don't know where to go.
Yeah, and like, I kind of have a similar story. Like, my mom, she would take us to church, but like, it wasn't really like, it wasn't taught in our home. And like, when we started to grow up, it was just kind of like, we would go every so often. And so church... And like, I mean, I didn't even know the story of like Moses until I finally became a Christian and started reading this for myself. But I didn't like to read either.
Yeah.
And so that first initial, like, the start is the hardest, and trying to understand and like what to do and everything is the hardest. I think this isn't like something I like to brag on. I mean, I actually don't like to say it, but I think I learned everything I know off of TikTok.
Oh,
because
once you get into like the good side of
the
feed,
algorithm.
The algorithm.
It's because I gave my life to Christ in 2020 during like the COVID period, which was when TikTok was like at its
Yeah.
peak.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people also were giving their life to Christ at that time. And so it was just like, I would look up like, oh, where should I read in the Bible? What should I do? Because I didn't have like anyone in my life who was Christian, or like I didn't have a car to drive myself to church, and I didn't have a church home that I wanted to go to. And so it was just like, that's like what I used.
Yeah.
And I think that's why like I wanted to start this podcast as well, and like bring other people on and talk about God, because it's like a lot of people also don't have anything besides like the internet that we have, you know, social media, which is a good and bad thing, right? But what's like one of your hardest things that you go through in your Christian walk?
I would say talking about it. It's probably the hardest thing for me, because you also begin to notice your friends and stuff when they, like the ones that don't follow, or the ones that claim that they follow but they're still doing this and that. And then you have to, it's hard to approach it, because it's like, I want to say it without hurting your feelings.
Yeah.
And I still struggle with that now. Actually, I'm not going to say recently, but it was like 2-3 months ago when I got into a conversation with one of my friends from high school. And we have a group chat, and one of them, to my knowledge, like this is, once again, I met these people back before I started following and stuff, and we never talked about it with each other. So like, even though it is like a black friend group, so you kind of assume that everybody believes, like nobody talked about it before, so you don't necessarily know. And then I think one of my friends also just recently started his walk. He hasn't told us about it, but he's also like, I'll be scrolling Instagram, like talking like feed and stuff, and a lot of my feed is just like car stuff and then Christian stuff.
Yeah.
And then I'll see he likes and reposts a lot of the Christian stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. But then he had randomly posted in the group chat. He had sent a reel, and it was a Christian reel. And then I sent like the screenshots of like the verses and stuff that he was talking about. And I said that as a joke. I was like, if you want, we can go verse for verse all day. I got you. And we got into the conversation of like God's children and stuff. And then he was saying that everybody's God's children, like everybody. And this is also something I thought too, but I had looked it up and stuff. And what it says is that it's not actually everybody and stuff. So obviously the people like all like the serial killers and stuff, they're not God's children. He doesn't claim them as his child. And in John 1 verses 12, it says, "Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God." So it's only the people that who are going out of his way to follow, to believe, and stuff like that. Those are the ones that he's like, oh yeah, that's my children. Those are my child and stuff. So all those people going out actively trying to do bad, those are the devil's children. And so those are his soldiers that he sent out to corrupt the world and stuff.
Yeah.
And then he had also asked an interesting question, and I didn't even have an answer to it, but he was like, so is everybody neutral then, technically? And I was like, personally, I don't know. Like, he didn't say that directly, but that's not an impossibility. That is something that we're gonna have to, you can go read about it and go look it up. And that's also amazing how you were talking about how you started on TikTok, right? Like, everything is so accessible nowadays to where you don't even necessarily have to own a Bible in order to know everything from it. You can go look it up. You can watch a whole bunch of YouTube videos and stuff and people breaking down every single chapter, every single thing. So it's like, it's so accessible and so easy now. And then
but you also have to be careful. Like, you have to do, like, I like how you do your research, because not everyone takes it kind of as their own way. So you have to actually
you have to
go
make
back
sure,
to the basis.
Yes, you have to one, read it for yourself, because here's a great example. Have you ever seen The Chosen?
I haven't watched it, like not all of it, but I've seen.
So when I first watched it, I hadn't like fully read the New Testament. And then when I went back and read the New Testament, I was like, oh, like what happened in the show didn't actually happen like in the Bible. And so it's like, that's a perfect example that like you have to know, you have to like study this yourself, so that when you go and hear a sermon on Sunday, or you watch a YouTube video, or you watch a Christian movie or Christian show, it's like you have to know the word for yourself. That way you can like decipher like what's true, what's wrong, like things like that. And like there's so much out there, but it's still like you have to be careful, you know. But like whether you have a physical Bible or you have a Bible on your phone, like the word is still the word, you know. So that's not different, but it's more, that's just more like preference.
So I like that too, because there's this guy that I follow called, there's multiple people I follow. There's like this purple puppet, I don't even know his name, but there's this guy, there's a guy called the Lord's Giant. I like the things that he be talking about.
I kind of feel like I know who you're talking about.
You probably he's really popular. But I like it because, like how you said, you have to look everything up. You have to read yourself. You have to study yourself. But also, even when studying yourself, you have to discuss with other people too, because their interpretation is different, or just their knowledge is also just way far beyond yours. And I don't remember the exact verse we were talking about, or he was talking about, but when he was breaking down this verse, he started referring to like Aramaic like language and stuff, and like the original meanings for like words and stuff like that. And once he started doing that, it pretty much completely changed my thought of the verse and stuff. And I was like, dang. It's like you really have to dive into it for him.
We figure that out a lot. So like with this podcast, and we have a weekly Bible study, and like each week we kind of like go back and forth on who's teaching. And like when you're teaching others, you got to make sure that you know it, right? Because you don't want to lead others into like the wrong thing. And so it's like we have had to dive deep so much farther than just like reading the Bible, like understanding the meaning behind names, the meaning behind places. Like it's so crazy how much God connects like so much together. It's so beautiful, but it's just like it makes you want to know more, but also it just like deepens a story that like you're reading and teaching. So it's beautiful.
But I love how like complex it is to where like sometimes you might not understand something, but it's giving you something like for when you're ready for it. Like you can go back and read something that you've read before, and it's like, oh my goodness, how did I not?
Yeah, there's been times where I'll write something in my Bible and I'll read that again like months later or a year later, and I'm like, I have a completely different understanding right now. And I'm like, Bella, that's wrong. And I'll like write a note to it. I'm like, that's wrong. Note to myself.
I think it says he does that on purpose though. That he speaks in parables because the people, you know, only open up the Bible on Sundays. Their understanding is going to be different than the person that opens it up every day, the person that's actually trying to follow. And essentially it's just the weeding out of people like that, the watered down Christians and stuff. But on that though, I've also had I question a lot more than answers I find, unfortunately. But there's been multiple times where I'll have a question, and this is back before I started reading. Like I have like questions and stuff, and they're getting answered like today and stuff like that. And I'm like, dang, I'm like, wait a minute, I could have like I'll be sitting at work listening to my ear. And like in the knowing I told you, I don't necessarily catch everything that's being said because I'm still working, I'm still focused on whatever thing I'm doing. There'll always be times where, I'm assuming this is God doing it, where for like all this would be just randomly, I'll just tune into every word that's being said. Then I realize I'm like, wait a minute. Like a year ago, I was always asking this question to myself. And then I'll go in, screenshot it or highlight it real quick, and I'll get back to working. And then I'll go back and read over it later. But one of those was with like marriage and stuff like that. And the reason why I questioned it is because you always get told to love thy neighbor and stuff like that. And obviously not everybody's Christian, unfortunately. But they always question me. I was like, so we should love the non-Christians too, and stuff like that. And then it was like, well, yeah, everybody is your neighbor and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, so we should do that. But then it always gets preached to you, always find, a godly spouse and stuff like that. And I was like, And I was like, it's kind of hard to do that now. I mean, yeah, it's pretty hard to do that nowadays because you have the false ones, you have the actual ones trying to differentiate the two. And then I read a passage where it was essentially saying that you can get into a relationship and marry somebody who's not necessarily godly, but that's not saying that all people. Now you can't be with anybody that's not godly. It has to be someone that doesn't, directly oppose Christianity and stuff like that. They're not necessarily religious themselves in the sense that like they're not, going out reading the Quran and stuff like that. But it was saying that somebody who's like, you tell them, hey, just so you know, I'm a Christian and stuff, and they're supporting of it and stuff like that, even if necessarily they're not following themselves. And then I was talking about that with my friend. I was like, hey, I never knew this. People always preaching and talking about get with a godly person. And yeah, it's talking about right here that it's not, you don't necessarily have to get with a godly person, just someone who accepts you. And they know that you're Christian and they accept that for you. And then he was like, yeah, that makes sense when you really think about it with love thy neighbor and everything and stuff like that. And then we talked about it more, and it was like, well, if they love you and you kind of came up to them one day and you were like, hey, you want to go to church with me? They're probably going to say yes if they really care for you. And then that can be you working on the process of converting them and stuff like that.
I think I know what you're trying to find.
There's a verse.
I was thinking it.
There's a verse that's tells us that we should be equally yoked with the person that we were with, and a lot of times, like, I went through a lot because I've been married for it'll be 2 years in July, and so there's a lot of misconceptions, and I feel like God has taught me a lot through marriage, and the point of marriage is not for your happiness. It's not to fulfill you. The purpose is to make you like Christ, because it's a covenant in the same way that Jesus had a covenant with his church. And it's like, when you are going about picking a spouse, there's this book I read that it says that yes, God leads us to people, leads us into relationships, but we pick who we choose to marry. And so it's like, if you pick someone ungodly, you are going to have a harder road, right? But also, like, if marriage is so spiritually connected that if you pick someone who isn't spiritually loving God,
you just don't want them to pull you away. Like, I can tell with you and Sam, y'all pull each other, like, just closer and closer.
Exactly. And so it's like, you choose that, and you want to be with someone who, can pull you closer to Christ. Because let's say they don't love God and they're like, oh, well, I mean, at least I know God, but they're not searching for him. They're not having a relationship with him. It's like, they will never truly and fully know how to love you. And it's not to say, like, I think Paul is the one that talks about it, where he's like, if you are already in a relationship with an unbeliever, stay there, because your faith in God can change them. And so it's like, I think that's what you're talking about, because it does say that you're supposed to.
Because y'all can always pull each other closer, even if you're far away.
Yeah, because if, like, you both got married and you both weren't necessarily believers, but one became a believer, you're not supposed to just leave your spouse just because now you love God. No, you're supposed to stay there, and who knows, like, you might change them. But I think you said something about, like, kind of like getting into a marriage or a relationship and with the mindset of like being able to change them.
Yeah.
And I think there is like a big warning against that, or just like protection against that, because one thing with like Christianity is we're here to plant the seeds, you know, we're the light of the world, we're the salt of the world. And so it's like we're here to plant the seeds, but we're not here to save people, you know. Only God can do that. You know, we talked about that this morning at church, with like how we're called to share the love of God, and God will do the rest. God does God work, and we plant the seeds.
Yeah.
You know?
I was talking with my friend about that, and I said, I'm gonna have to read these later again, just to double check and hit y'all up later. But the sections I have highlighted here is Luke 16, 1 Corinthians 7, and Mark 10. I think those three were talking something about it.
Yeah, because 7 talks about Paul's like telling us basically instructions for marriage, but he's talking to 4 different kind of people. He's talking to married people, single, unmarried, and widowed, and then believers married to an unbeliever. And so it's like instructions for each kind. Okay. Here it is. All right, 2 Corinthians 6, starting at 14. It says, "Don't team up with those who are unbelievers. How can righteousness be a partner with wickedness? How can light be with darkness? What harmony can there be between Christ and the devil? How can a believer be a partner with an unbeliever? And what union can there be between God's temple and idols? For we are the temple of the living God. As God said, I will live in them and walk among them. I will be their God, and they will be my people. Therefore come out from among unbelievers and separate yourself from them, says the Lord. Don't touch their filthy things, and I will welcome you, and I will be your father, and you will be my sons and daughters, says the Lord Almighty." Now this is very like, this passage is very harsh.
Yeah, because like those filthy people.
Yeah, he's like, don't be with the sinners. But it's like, it's just a warning, because marriage is so deep. It's a covenant that is like a blessing. It's something that only, you know, God gives. And that's why the devil has created single mothers and like all these things within the world that corrupts marriage, because marriage is supposed to be in order to make you more holy. And so it's like, if you're not with someone that's helping you grow, then like you're not helping yourself.
So I often have like questions and stuff like that, where I'll just send like a verse to my friend every now and then, and I'll just be like, "Hey, what's your take on this?" and stuff like that, and then we'll discuss it real quick. But another thing, when there's this period of time, like when I first tried to fast and stuff, and I didn't study up on it or nothing like that. I was just like, and here's the first time, I didn't even know that Christians fasted at first.
Really?
Yeah. And then once I learned that, I was like, I'm gonna try that real quick. And so what I did was, I did it for 12 hours a day. And I think I did 12 to 12. I did that for a week straight. And then, but where I went about it wrong was, even though it's supposed to be a religious thing, not like a healthy thing, I went to my friend, I was like, "Yeah, bro, I'm fasting, but this thing getting me down and stuff like that." I'm like, "Yeah, bro, I'm telling my coworkers and everything." And then I made it through that week. And I was like, okay, it wasn't as bad as I thought. But even though while I was doing that, I wasn't much reading my Bible or nothing like that. I wasn't really praying or nothing like that. Just telling everybody about it. And then, like, as I said a while ago, when I was talking about, I would go through things or have these questions and get answered like months to years later. And this was, I kid you not, I was at work, headphones in, my security job, listening, and it went over that section. I was supposed to be talking about like fasting and stuff like that. And then it said, you're not supposed to go out and boast about it. And then it's also saying that do not, I think it said twist and like contort your face and stuff. Like people are not supposed to look at you and be like, "Oh, there's something going on." You're supposed to be pretty much like nothing's happening, like happy, not flipping and stuff like that. And then I was like, okay, so I messed up there. So I tried to fast again. And I did that. I was like, okay, cool. I made it through. I only did it one day, but I made it through it. I was like, okay, cool. And then also read after that you're supposed to be in your Bible and so you're supposed to be praying a lot more. And I was like, dang, okay, I messed it up again. I was like, dang. And so I did it again. I was in my Bible a lot more and I was praying a lot. And I didn't realize this at the time, but that was, when I did that fast, that was the easiest one I did. I was like, when I got to the end of my 12 hours, I was like, I'm gonna go for 24. So I made it the full 24. I was like, if I wanted to, I could go longer, but I had a double coming up. I was like, no, let me go ahead and eat. And so I was like, okay, that was the easiest fast I've done so far. That was the longest I've ever done a fast. I'm like, that was cool.
Okay, so I have a question on the fasting aspect because you
we
said
talk about fasting a lot and like it's an importance.
yeah. So you said the first time you boasted about it, and then the second time you weren't, like reading your Bible or like really like doing the purpose of
We're
the fast.
relying on God.
Yeah. So my question for you is, why do you think it's important to, one, not boast about it, basically be in secret about it, but also why do you think it's important to be reading your Bible and be in prayer?
To not boast about it because from the way I think about it, it just seems performative when you're trying to boast about it instead of trying to go to everybody and be like, hey, look what I'm doing, and apparently when I said that to my friend, I didn't notice at the time because he didn't tell me, but he told me afterwards. He had thought I was boasting about it in the sense of, well, I'm better than you. I'm a better Christian than you. And I was like, you got that from that? He was like, yeah. I was like, oh, my bad, and I didn't mean it like that. And then, so yeah, it just seems very performative and stuff. Very, I want to say fake, but not necessarily, because, like I said, even though I had good intentions, I didn't mean anything by it. It was still the fact that I did it caused to bring other people down and stuff like that. And then, well, I think it's important to be in your Bible and stuff because, while fasting, you're killing your flesh the entire time, letting it know that you have power over it and the power given to you by God, so it can't control you. And so while you're reading and stuff, so you're killing your flesh while trying to glorify God at the same time. It becomes a very powerful thing to do. And like when you're praying and stuff, it becomes a very powerful prayer. And then I also read, I didn't find it when I was looking for it, but I also read that anything or the believer can eat anything and they can be, satisfied by it. And then when I thought about that, I was like, Like I said, that the last fast that I did where I went the longest time, and yeah, it was the easiest fast I'd done. That was when I was reading and stuff like that. And when they talk about your daily bread of reading the Bible and stuff, so I was like, is that what they mean? Eat anything, my daily bread, and I'm satisfied off of it. And I put two and two together. I was like, man, that's crazy. I was like, that's a crazy thing to think about. And this is all information I got in bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And like I was going to, or as I said earlier, where they speak in parables, so only the people that are truly invested and truly trying to learn can actually learn and actually follow. And so if you think about, like, if the first time I fasted would have never read, I would never got to this conclusion. The second time I fasted, if I would have never read that's supposed to be in the Bible, I would never got to this conclusion. The third time I fasted, when I figured out, oh, this is a lot easier when I'm reading the Bible and stuff, then I probably would have never read again and then saw that, this all correlates, is all on purpose, right? And, God reveals things to you when you're ready. And then he took me through the step-by-step process, literally 1, 2, 3, 4, to teach me how to properly fast. I was like, damn, I'm like, that's actually crazy.
Yes. No, that's crazy. One thing, like, because a fast isn't always, like, just from food, like, sometimes people who struggle with like social media or struggle with girls or boys always needing to be in a relationship. Like anything, it could be anything that you were spiritually struggling with, something that is like taking you away from God. But I think like the biggest thing with fasting from food is that, like you just said, the bread of life. Like God is supposed to be our bread, our daily bread. And so it's like when you fast, you are forced to literally rely on Him. And you're sitting there with your Bible like, okay, I'm eating. Like you're eating His word. And that's why you're not supposed to talk about it, because when you're talking about it with other people, you're not doing it for the right reasons. And if you're sitting there boasting that like, hey, look at me, I'm fasting, it's just like how your friend felt like you were better than them. And it's like, if I fasted and I go and tell Abby that, then she's going to be like sitting in herself like, man, like, should I be fasting? And then she might fast for the wrong reasons. Not because God called her to fast. She might fast because, oh, well, Bella's doing it, so I should be doing it. And so it's like a personal thing, a personal heart thing, but also the way that it trickles with the Christians around you. But yeah, I mean, fasting is very important. I think it's something that, every Christian, should be doing, but it's not something talked about very often. It's not something that people are taught, and it's hard to like find it in the Bible because it doesn't talk about it a lot. And, but it does give you a step-by-step in Matthew 16 through 18. It gives you like a step-by-step on how to fast, kind of like what you were already talking about. Don't boast about it. Go into your room, pray, fast. But I mean, it's important to do because it puts you on a deeper level with God. Because when you have nothing, when you are fully what's the word?
I know what you're talking about, but I couldn't tell you.
I don't know. When you're fully surrendered to Christ, it's like He's able to work in you. He's able to speak to you and like fix whatever maybe you're struggling with, or maybe something that you don't even know. He reveals all of that to you. But I love that like you were talking about Him revealing the steps to you, because like that goes with everything. Like when you're starting to walk with Christ, it's like all of that is gonna trickle along and start to be revealed, and it's so beautiful. Like I love when things happen. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like that's amazing, or like I needed that right now, and like you put that in my life at the perfect time. It's amazing. It's amazing. So I have a few questions for you, and then if you have questions for us. First thing, what is something that like you want to tell our audience, something that you either struggled with or something that like made everything with your walk with Christ like worth it?
Worth it? I would say, I guess I'm just a lot more, comfortable now. A lot of things have been making a lot more sense now, which I've been needing that. But one thing that I've definitely been struggling, that's something I still struggle with actually, is just talking to people about it. It's something I'm still trying to work on. And like, even though like right now I'm just talking about it with my friends, like being able to talk about it with strangers and stuff. And I don't know, because I don't think I'm at the point to where I'm educated enough to just talk about it with anybody and stuff like that. And there would be times where like I'll literally be at work and someone would just come up to me and he would just, we'll just have like maybe slight conversation and start laying on verses and stuff. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, I'll be honest. Like, remember how I told you, like, I'm very super critical of myself like that. So, like, there's probably not a single verse I can just, remember off the top of my head and stuff like that. So, a lot of the times when I'm trying to, like, tell my friends and stuff about it, or I'm trying to talk about it, it would just be it's me being like, oh yeah, this and that, but you go read yourself, like don't quote me exactly and stuff like that. Or I'd be sitting on my phone scrolling for like 30 minutes trying to find the verse I was talking about. But yeah, so I'm struggling with the sense of, you know, oh, these Christians look like they put so much effort into it. They know so much.
Like comparing
Like,
yourself, yeah.
like they're up here, I'm still down here and stuff, you know. And also, you know, he talks about that in the sense of growing up in your faith and stuff, maturing and stuff. So I still think I'm at, like, you know, the infant stage right now.
The infant stage.
Something I want to say about that is that we talked about it this morning. You don't like have to go, I mean, you do, but eventually, but you don't have to go word for word, verse for verse when you're trying to share the light of Jesus with people. It is about how you live your life and about like how you walk your walk, and that in and in itself is enough.
Yeah, so her description, we have this community group at our church, and he was telling us this story. Basically, this guy was like going out and meeting this other guy. I'm not gonna tell you the whole story because it was very long. But this guy, let's say Joe, he's like follower of Christ, like crazy, like he loves the Lord, he devotes everything to him, and he's having dinner with this other guy, Jamie. And as they're having like dinner, Jamie was questioning how Joe could like basically talk to someone else, because he would talk to like Muslims and he would try to convert them. But they were all at like a dinner table, and Joe was talking to a Muslim, and he was just like talking. He wasn't like, oh, you know, Ephesians 2,
he wasn't trying to share the gospel
6,
or
like he
anything.
wasn't like verse for verse. He was just sharing
Talking about life
the
and
love
how
of God. And it was like, you know, that transformed the Muslim into becoming Christian, because all he did was sit there and talk. But also, like, I felt the same way when I was like in my walk. It was like, oh, but God, like, I just don't know enough to, you know, talk about your word. And it's hard because it's like, you know, of course, the longer you're a Christian, the more you're going to learn about the Bible, all the little details. You're going to start memorizing things. But it's like in the beginning, we're still called to like talk about it with, you know, strangers. But then you're like, okay, but like, how do I do that? But it's like, I think the first step is in prayer, you know, praying that God will work through you in those moments. Because with Moses was like, I can't do it, Lord. Like, I
tried to run away.
He was just like super anxious about it, because he's like, I'm not a people talker, all these things. And God is like, all you have to do is show up, and I'm going to talk through you. And it's in the same way, like, the Holy Spirit talks through us in every single moment. As long as we are dwelling within Him, as long as we are allowing ourselves to be open to God, the Holy Spirit's going to talk. And so it's like, that fear is just like the devil. And I struggle with this too, because don't get me wrong, like, there's some times where it's like, it's scary. Like, God's like, I want you to be praying for that person. I want you to go talk to that person. And there's a lot of times I'm like, okay, but that's scary. You know, like, it is hard because we have this fear in the back of our minds that the devil has put there. The devil has tricked us into thinking that, like, oh, all these people are going to hate us. But it's like, Jesus already warned us that, like, people are going to hate you. But that's besides the point, because all the other souls that are going to be saved by you allowing me to work in you. And so that's like, it's hard to get over that, but pray over it and just like don't fear, and just be able to allow God to like work through you.
Yeah.
And He will.
Because at the end of that transformation, you look back and you're like, wow, I'm a completely different person.
Yeah.
So.
Amen.
And another thing I'm worried about too is because I would see people like online and stuff, and the way that they try to teach other people is like extremely aggressive, and it causes those people to turn away even more. Yeah. Because of the way that they're going about teaching them stuff. And I always get worried that I'm gonna say something or do something that's gonna cause that to be the effect on people.
Turn people away.
Yeah.
You know. But amen, like I said, it's a fear of the devil. It's just like he wants to confuse you. He wants to turn you away. He wants to make you so scared that you're not going to talk about God. So what questions?
I'm trying to think about where to start.
Oh boy.
No, because it's not like, I guess it's more just like general questions, just like in general. So going back to like the marriage thing, right? Let's say that you were in a position to where you were in that situation where somebody doesn't believe, they don't oppose you or nothing, they're not pulling you away or nothing like that, but they don't believe and they're saying that there's little to no chance that they're going to switch over or nothing like that. So how would you handle that situation? Like would you leave them? Would you just stay with them, write it out, or
Like when you're already in marriage, or like before marriage?
Before marriage.
Truthfully, like if you're in that situation, then if they're not wanting to go towards Christ, then you shouldn't want to go towards marriage. Because when you get into marriage, it's not that you're stuck, but I mean, you're kind of stuck in a way, right? You're living together, you're doing literally like everything together.
Yeah.
You're gonna start to just, I mean, it's gonna tear you away from Christ.
But also, it's all about their heart. Like, when you have a relationship with Christ, it changes you. And so that person not having a relationship with Christ, their heart is not in the same position as yours.
Exactly. And I said this earlier, but like, if someone doesn't love God, then they can't love you. And so it's really hard to understand when you're not in marriage, and it's hard to explain as someone who is married, because it's like, I don't know, I just said it's hard to explain, and I'm trying to explain it. But you want to be with someone who loves Christ, because we all have a desire to be loved, right? And yes, in a marriage, you can't 100% like fill someone. I can't fill up my husband. He can't fill up me. Only God can do that. So as long as I'm going to Christ first, and as long as he's going to Christ first, then we can love each other and serve each other in a better way. But if I'm going to Christ and my husband is going to his self and his flesh, I can serve him. I can do whatever I want to do because I love God. I can try to love him, but I'm never going to be loved. I'm never going to have that back. And yes, there's so many beautiful stories where in marriage, you know, because one spouse loved God so much, sometimes it takes years, but that second spouse starts to love them, or like starts to love Christ, starts to transform. But there's a lot of stories where it's like it ends in divorce because someone's heart is so hardened that they can't like turn towards God. And so for you, your question, like before marriage, if their heart is already hard, then it's like there's no point in wasting your time. Because in Proverbs, I don't remember the verse, but it says someone who argues with like fools makes you a fool. And it's like so many people.
You can love someone and you just have to think about what the relationship actually means to you and to them.
Yeah. Wait, go deeper into that.
Okay. So I don't like talking about relationships. But you're loving them and they love you. But just because y'all are loving each other, you are not loving her the same if you love Christ. Like you were saying. So she's loving you, but she is loving you the way she knows how. And the way she knows how is not the right way. Because it's not love through Christ.
Yeah. And like I said, that's hard to explain until you experience that. But you don't want to step into something where they don't love Christ and then you experience the wrong thing of marriage.
Yeah.
You know. And that's why Paul warns against dating even just dating an unbeliever, being married to an unbeliever, because it's like,
Also having a proper foundation.
yeah.
Okay, so on that same token, moving from the marriage part, like with that same situation but with friends, how would y'all go about that?
Talk about the sinners in the table.
Yeah. So you know how in Matthew was a tax collector. He had tax collector friends. Jesus asked Matthew, he's like, okay, I want you to open your home to me. I want you to throw us all a dinner. I want your friends to be there and all of my disciples to be there. So everyone he had already called to like follow him. So they all go there, and then some of the religious leaders are looking through Matthew's window, which I don't know why they were at his window, but they were like, y'all are sitting, your rabbi is sitting with sinners, like tax collectors. Like tax collectors were big hated back then, especially Matthew, because he was a Jew and a tax collector. He chose to walk away from his beliefs and basically like his like group. Like he walked away from the church and now is against the church kind of. And so it's like a lot of people, you'll hear them say Jesus sat with sinners, but he didn't sin with them. And it's the same way with our friends. It's okay to have friends who aren't Christians. It's okay to have friends who are Muslims, who are Buddhist, who are, whatever. It's not that it's bad, but it's how you are around them.
Yeah, like if you're hiding your Christianity or, turning away from that and, so one of my neighbors, I ran into her on the street and she was talking about, like, I think my grandma said, like, Happy Easter to her or something, and she was like, oh, we don't celebrate both things. And I'm like, well, still, Jesus died for you. Even though you don't celebrate.
Still. But yeah, it's like let's say you work around some people who they drink or they smoke or whatever, and they invite you into like let's say like a dinner, and they're all drinking, and they're like, okay, do you want to drink?
And you're throwing them back.
And you're over there taking drinks without saying anything about God. It's like you're sinning with them.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's not that it's bad to not have people who aren't believers. That's actually a blessing, because how would you ever create disciples? How would you ever talk about God? How would you ever share his love if you don't surround yourself with sinners?
Yeah, you just can't let them lead you astray.
Exactly. You just can't go into their life. You have to stay into your life. But also you can't spend every single day with them, because the more you spend time with someone, the more you become like them.
Yeah.
And so that's why you're supposed to spend time with people who are like Christ, so that you can also grow and become like Christ. So it's like, does that answer your question?
Yeah. I would say on that though, like me personally, I do drink and I do smoke, but like we're going out with friends and stuff. I'll tell them, they're like, yeah, we're gonna drink, so I'm like, okay, cool, I'll drink, but I'll never get to the point where I'm even like budging on like I'll stop way before then. Like, oh, do you want more? I'll tell them, oh no, that goes against my beliefs. Sometimes I'll ask, what do you mean? A lot of them already know, but sometimes I ask, what do you mean? And then I'll go into that stuff.
Yeah.
But because I think it says like just being inebriated and stuff like that, that's what allows those thoughts and those stuff to come in.
Yeah.
So I try my best to refrain from that. But I bet you're supposed to talk about this. But one thing also I'm low-key confused about, I guess this can be another question. So on that sense of like inebriation and stuff, would technically be like exhaustion, would that be a part of it? Because that's something that I've been struggling with a lot since I've been working a lot and stuff like that. There'd be stints of time where like between going to work, working on my cars, and spending times with friends and family, there'd be times where I go 24 hours without sleep. And then there'd be, the longest I went was 36 hours without sleep. And then,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, like even,
I can't even
well,
function on 2 hours.
yeah, I said, no, it be struggling. But I've noticed that, like, in those moments, like, those thoughts and stuff will start to creep in. I'm like, whoa, like, what's going on? And I'm like, I'm in my word and everything. Like, because usually, for me, it doesn't just happen. It's usually like a catalyst to it. And I was like, that's how I think about it. I'm like, oh, what's the catalyst? Like, what's going on? And then I was struggling with that thought, like trying to figure out what it was. And then that's when I thought about it. But I was talking with my friend about it, not necessarily about that specific thing, but it just kind of, we were talking about the idea of like smoking, drinking, inebriation, and stuff like that. And that thought, I didn't say it to him, but the thought that came into my head, I was like, is me being exhausted, is that, a form of inebriation? Is that what's causing me to be like, having all these thoughts and stuff?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I thought you were gonna keep going.
It's literally a good question.
Okay. Let me go back to the drinking and smoking, and then we'll go to the exhaustion, because I have a good example for that. Because Jesus went through that too. So, with the drinking and smoking, guys, it cut off, and I had all these beautiful things to say, and then God was like, I don't want you to say that, I want you to say something else. But, so there's this, I'm going to re-say this, but there was this pastor that I saw this video right before this podcast, because I was praying. I was like, God, please, like, give me all the answers prior to this. Like, give me the things that I need to bring up. And this pastor, he was bringing up alcohol. And he was like, he is a youth pastor. And so he deals with a lot of people like our age, like coming up to him, saying like, I smoke, I drink, like all these things, like, but Jesus, And so a lot of the things that people will say will be like, oh, but Jesus drank. And it's like, okay, Jesus drank, Jesus flipped tables, but we're called to be like Jesus, right? So is the rest of your life like Jesus? Are you sacrificing yourself for people around you? Are you loving people wholeheartedly around you? Are you dwelling in the Lord? Are you giving everything up for God? Because it's like we want to say, oh, but like Jesus drank, so that, and if I'm called to be like Jesus, then I should be able to drink. Jesus was angry, he flipped tables. So if I'm angry, I should be able to flip tables around my friends, my family. I should be able to get angry. Okay, but is the rest of your life looking like Christ?
Yeah.
It's like we choose and pick what we want. And it's not that alcohol is bad. Same thing with tattoos, cutting your hair, getting piercings. It's your heart behind it. It's your motives behind it. If you are going out,
because they think like for a good time, like everyone relies on like, oh, let's go drink and to go to the bars for a good time, for a night out.
If we are called to be set apart as Christians, we are called to be different, then we shouldn't be doing the things that this world is doing. If you're preaching the gospel, if you're preaching about Jesus, but you're going with people who are unbelievers and you're going to bars or you're going out to dinner and you're drinking, what do you think they're seeing? They're not seeing your love for Christ. They're seeing that you're drinking. And so it's one thing, like, I said this earlier, but I drink too on special occasions. Like if me and my husband have an anniversary or something, like we will get 1 cup of alcohol. Because I don't firmly believe that alcohol is just like this, like, it's a sin. No, it's the deceit behind it. It's what you're doing behind it. People will say, oh, well, Jesus drank wine. Well, if you literally look into what went into wine back then versus wine right now, it is completely different. Like the alcohol then is not as strong as what we have right now. And so it's really just a lot about what convictions you have, in your walk with Christ, the cussing, the friends, the alcohol, the drugs, the women, the boys, like that's all something that God is going to work in you and he's going to flush out everything that's bad. But what I like to say is that like, if you have an addiction to something, like if alcohol is an addiction, if smoking is an addiction for you, then that's your flesh, that's sin. But if it's something that like you do every so often because you're celebrating something or whatever it is, it's not. a sin because of your heart behind it.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying? But it's also like this temple that we have is God's. And so it's like everything that we're doing should glorify God. Everything that we're putting into it should glorify God. It's the same with food. Because people are like, oh, well, I don't drink alcohol. But yeah, you go to McDonald's 3 times a week.
Yeah.
You eat fast food almost every single day. You're eating pizza at home all the time. What you put into your body, like, matters, you know, because it's also feeding your flesh and your spirit. And with the exhaustion thing, when Jesus was in the wilderness, you know, when he was being tempted by Satan, he was tired, he was exhausted. And that's why Satan was there. Because when we are at our weakest is when we're tired, when we're exhausted at night, when we had a long day, you know, from work, from family, whatever it is. When you're exhausted, you are at the weakest moment. And that's when the devil wants to attack you. And one thing to go like against that is Ephesians 6:10 through 17. So this is, have you ever heard of like the armor of God? Okay. So I'm going to read it for you and then we can talk about it. Verse 10, it says, a final word. Be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on all of God's armor so that you will be able to stand firm against all strategies of the devil. For we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. So it goes on to tell us each piece. I don't have it like drawn out, but it goes out to tell us each piece that we should spiritually be putting on. But that verse 12, it shows us how powerful. Like we think that we're just like here as like cute little Christians, you know, just love God.
Yeah.
Life's all good and glorious. But it's like, no, we're now fighting against the devil. It's like when you're walking in the world, you're in the devil's playground. Like you're fine. Life seems easier, seems more fun, enjoyable because nothing's going against you because the devil wants to keep you comfortable.
Yeah.
He wants to keep you happy so that you never see the light. And so it's like when you start to walk into the light, life actually becomes harder. And it becomes harder because now you're being attacked from all these things that you can't see. And so it's like with the exhaustion, you really gotta kind of work through your own schedule.
Yeah.
You know, I think like in the same way with what you're putting into your body, what you're doing also matters. Like you need to be getting enough sleep. You need to be having time like for yourself and for God so that you have, you know, like that rest. That's why we have the Sabbath day, you know, that's why we have the rest day. That's why that was like the whole thing. And so it's like, you know, figuring out your schedule so that you're not sleeping for 36 hours because that's crazy. Just like working through that, and it'll, of course, you know, it'll help your body, you know. We're human beings. We got this weak body that's not, I hate it. And so it's just like, the more you take care of yourself, the less that the devil can attack you.
Mm-hmm.
But the more also that, you know, Ephesians 6, you're putting on your armor of God every single day, the more that you're fighting against those temptations, those thoughts, your flesh. And so it's just like, it's crazy to think about because when I was like a baby Christian, people would talk about stuff like this, like, oh, spirits, demons, like, I would see people like taking spirits out of humans, like out of bodies, people falling on the ground, stuff like that. And it's so crazy. And when you're a baby Christian, you're just like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. Like, that looks crazy. Like, what are you doing? But it's like, there's so much craziness in this world. There's so much power. There is spirits. There is demons. There is so much that we're fighting against that we just like can't see. And so it's like, that's why you have to be careful with everything that you do. everything you watch, the music that you listen to, the people you're around. Because someone who you think is your friend, they could have a spirit in them, and that spirit's whole purpose is to tear you from God. And it's crazy when you start thinking of, things like that, but it's reality. Because the devil doesn't want us to know God. He doesn't want us to go to heaven. He wants us all to go to hell so he can torture us for eternity. So work on the exhaustion. But even in moments where like you feel exhausted and you start thinking those things, you gotta be like, Lord, I rebuke this. Lord, this isn't you. Lord, I'm your child. You have told me that I am protected. You have told me that no one can touch me because you are guarding me from all sides. So whatever this thought that I'm having, I rebuke it because it's not from you. Yeah. The same thing with the fear of not talking to people. I'm speaking to myself right now, but it's the same. It's like, I rebuke that because it's not you, God. That's the devil trying to tear me away from talking about the Lord. So, it's funny. Because same thing for this video when you texted me. Initially, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. Like, God, thank you for, this. But then the devil started creeping in and he's like, okay, but like, what if like this? Like, what if he's not actually Christian? He comes on here and he like talks about all these bad things. Like, what if like, this is something that I'm trying to protect and whatever. And then like, God was like, Bella, that's not for me. Like, that's not. Like, I gave you this opportunity. I want you to use it. Like, stop letting the devil come into your mind, come into your life.
Different perspectives of things. Like how you were talking about how once you start following, it actually gets more difficult. Nobody ever explained that to me. And that's one thing.
Well, honestly, that's one thing. Like, no one's going to tell you that because then you're not going to want to. You're not going to want to. But yeah, no one talks about it because it's like, it's kind of scary. Like, oh, hey, you should come love God because God loves you. But like,
everyone else is going to hate you now.
But when you give your life to Christ in like a couple weeks, maybe a couple days, you're going to feel absolutely terrible.
You feel terrible because you're convicted, like, to change.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't want to change.
Yeah.
So I think God had already blessed me with that sense of that mentality, in the sense of like, I always hold myself to a standard, right? Like anything I'm doing, it could be playing a video game, doing work, or going to the gym, right? And always super critical of myself. I'm like, dang, I could have done that better. Dang, why am I doing this wrong? Stuff like that. So when I started following, that necessarily didn't change. It didn't blindside me or nothing like that. But I've seen it has blindsided people sometimes. It's like when you start following, you realize how far you are, right?
Yeah.
And that blindside people is so heavy to where they're like, you know what, this isn't for me, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so it gets to a point where it irks me to like see it happen. Like for instance, there's this like a YouTuber group that I watch, right? And there's like 7 of them, but only one of them is a believer. But their usual dynamic, when they first started out, I don't think he was a believer. I don't know for sure. But like he's like a very heavy one now. Like if he's posting online, it's more like he's like Christian content, stuff like that. But I remember he gets into, I'm not gonna say arguments because it's just friendly banter. But he'd be talking about like with the friends stuff, like while they're recording videos and stuff. Their content is pretty vulgar though, so it is kind of funny to have that switch up when they do that. Excuse me. But one thing that I hate though is that he doesn't take the effort to like actually try to explain to them and teach them and stuff. Which I know because it's like their normal dynamic is have fun, mess around, have jokes and stuff like that, and to just go into that deep of a like conversation is kind of like messing up the vibe a little bit. Yeah. But the thing is, like they had deep conversation all the time because they're like truly friends. Like they meet each other's wives and stuff. They meet each other's kids. But it's like there's this one clip where it was just three of them. One of them was a Christian one. They were just all talking to each other. And then two of them had said, they were like, they're making the common joke that everybody makes where it's like, oh, if you're a mass serial killer, you committed multiple genocides and stuff. All you have to do is say, I accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior, you automatically get into heaven. And that they were saying that's a regular joke. And then they were a little serious about it when they said, if it wasn't for that fact alone, I would be a believer. And I was like, oh, that's a cool thing. Number one, that's not how that works.
Right.
And then I was like, and I was just like, talking to like your screen sometimes like they can hear you, even though they can't. I was essentially looking at the Christian guy. I was like, here's your opportunity to explain it to him. He just brushed it off and just kept on talking about playing the game and stuff like that. And I was like, it's stuff like that where it's like somebody's so close, or you can genuinely help somebody if you just properly explain it to them. Even if, once again, you don't know all the words, the Lord speak through you. If you need to, go look it up. The internet, it's an amazing thing. Even though it has, its flaws and stuff like that, you can still fact check everything you're looking up and stuff like that. So I'm like, back to what I was saying about how people don't properly explain what it's like to follow and stuff like that. And like the people that I curated on Instagram are the people that actually do break it down and everything, talking about like how hard it actually is.
Yeah.
Because if you actually like just look at like the surface of it, a lot of people are just posting about the same three verses and nothing else. And it gets extremely misleading and stuff like that. And I think God blessed me with that curiosity too, because when I first started like seeing Christian stuff on Instagram, it was just those same three verses over and over and over again. And what I did myself, I would hear him say it, and I was like, okay. And then I go into the comments, and then there'd be some people agreeing, and there'd be some people disagreeing. I was like, well, why are we not all on the same page? I'm like, why is it not everybody agreeing or everybody disagreeing? And so I'll read the comments, and I'm like, and then I'll go look it up myself. And I'm like, okay, what's actually the case? And then that's how a lot of my, like, this is before I actually decided to dedicate time to reading and stuff like that. And I think that's how I really got into it. It's just honestly just curiosity, like what was going on and everything like that. And so, yeah.
And that's actually such a blessing because the curiosity is you just thirsting to know God more.
Yeah.
And that's such a blessing to, have, because not a lot of people want that or desire that. Not a lot of people want to like fully just dive deep into the Bible, take the time to really learn like what you're reading. And so it's a blessing to want to know God, to, thirst to understand more than just like the three verses that most people talk about, right? And so that's beautiful. Do you have any other questions?
Let's say now I can think of it right now, to be honest.
I feel like we covered a lot.
We did. We did. Okay, well, once again, just like thank you for this time. It was such a blessing to hear your story after not seeing you like for so long. I mean, I know in middle school we really didn't like know each other. I think you were friends with like my brother.
Yeah, I talked to him, I think just before he went into the army. And we were talking about video games, and he just randomly blindsided me with that fact. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, because it was so like, we were literally talking about video games, and he just dropped it and then kept on talking about video games. I'm like, whoa, let's not skip past that. I was like, yeah, and then.
He was like, by the way, I'm going to the army, just low key.
Yeah. And I said, that was weird, because I remember, I think it was like a year after I moved, I asked like some of y'all's like Instagram started popping up like stories and stuff like that. And then I had seen, I was like, oh, a lot of them are Christian now. I was like, what happened? And not in the sense of like, why are they doing that? But I was like, what was the change essentially? Because back then we weren't necessarily talking about it. Then again, I guess we were young and stuff like that. But I was like, yeah, we weren't necessarily talking about it. Now, see, I was like, oh, like they're posting about it and everything. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Like, everybody's going through these changes and stuff.
Yeah.
But,
It's nice to look back at like the people we graduated with or went to school with, and I see them posting about God. I'm like, that's beautiful. Like, I feel like God is really working through our generation, like Gen Z, whatever, whatever you want to call it. But I love that. Like, I feel like we have a revival almost. I feel like a lot of us are so tired of what we went through with our own parents. Because I feel like a lot of our parents were very like lukewarm. Like a lot of Christians I talk to my age, like it's always the same story. Like, oh, my parents went to church or they took us to church, but it wasn't really like they're living for God. And so I feel like that generation was very lukewarm, and I feel like we're all kind of just wanting to be better than that, wanting to take an extra step to change something going on in this world, to be a change, you know? And so, yeah, but I appreciate your time. It was a blessing to get to hear, you know, your testimony, see what God is doing, you know, through your life. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching this podcast. And as we, you know, got to hear about Preston here and just kind of, you know, talk about a lot of the things that we all struggle with, you know, in our walk with Christ. So just thank you for watching. Please go like and subscribe. Follow us along, guys. Me and Abby are going to be starting a new chapter. We're going to start talking about all the disciples in the Bible, you know, going into their story. But stay along. Thank you for watching. I pray that God will bless all of y'all throughout this week. Stay safe. Bye.